have a fellow sergeant with me today who I'm so excited to talk to. I have been talking about him for quite a while, and I want him to talk to you about some of the things that he has been through and how he has really taken a terrible situation that he and his officers went through and is turning it into such a positive in his life and the lives of other police officers. Sergeant John Mattingly, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So if people don't recognize your name, you were the police sergeant that was badly injured in the Breonna Taylor, Kenneth Walker shooting in Louisville, Kentucky. Just remind folks what happened that day.
We were assisting another unit, wasn't our case, and there were short bodies. It was a 5 warrants that they were serving simultaneously. And when we were assigned one of the doors, which happened to be Breonna Taylor's, and myself and 6 other detectives went to the door that night, knocked and announced many times. They asked us to give this one a little bit longer because they were only really looking for materials relating to the other suspect in the case to draw it all together, because it was kind of a conspiracy case is what they were looking to get. And so we gave her 45 seconds to a minute of knocking, announcing, which is just unheard of when you're, doing a drug warrant. It's way too long. And my gut kind of told me that from the beginning, but I was trying to honor what the lead investigator in this case wanted. And as soon as the door was breached, they didn't answer after about a minute. So we breached the door. I cleared the right room from outside the doorway. And as soon as we stepped in the door to go clear the rest of the house, was met with gunfire from down a long, narrow hall from Kenneth Walker. And tragically, Breonna Taylor was right next to him. He was almost overlapping her. And as soon as he shot, he dove into the room and left her out in the hall by herself. And unfortunately, she was caught in the exchange of gunfire.
So I want to reiterate that you did knock and announce, and I worked a narcotics unit for many years. And when you give somebody the time to, when you do knock and announce, almost a minute there, that's time for them to gather their weapon or flush their evidence or run out the back door or whatever it is, right? And you gave them a lot of time, and you obviously gave Kenneth Walker enough time to get his firearm and eventually use it on you. Breonna Taylor, I want to reiterate, she was not asleep in her bed, right?
No, maybe prior to us getting there, but once we started knocking, like you said, the whole point of knocking and moving quickly on a warrant is for that psychological advantage. When you come through the door and people are asleep, they don't have time to get their bearings, or they may talk this big game, I'm going to shoot out with the police, but generally they're so overwhelmed by the noise, by us yelling police, by us moving through the house, that they give up. He had time to get up, get dressed, retrieve his firearm, tell her to come out with him, and then be standing in the hall when we actually finally made entry.
Well, and I want to say that had you not knocked and announced, there's a real good, I would think that Breonna Taylor would still be alive and you probably wouldn't have been shot, right?
No, and you wouldn't know who I was. It'd be a non-factor here.
Exactly. Now, in this situation, so you go in, and when you say, you clear the rooms, that means you make sure there's no other bad guys and this and that. And then Kenneth Walker fires at you, and you are hit nearly in the femoral artery, right? Talk about what that was like getting shot.
It wasn't nearly, it actually severed it.
Okay.
The getting shot, it's funny how your brain works. Everybody's different, but mine, it was like an HD camera slowed down and saw the barrel of the gun and saw the fire and felt it at the same time, but it was all so quick. I mean, we're talking milliseconds. But it was more like like you hear on TV. It felt like a hot poker going through my leg, like somebody punched it or hit it with a baseball bat and a hot poker. But the adrenaline's up so much at that point, you don't really feel the pain. You go into survival mode, and your training kicks in and did what we needed to do, and we got out of there alive.
Well, and that's such an important point, because now that we're in the era of defund the police, one of the things that's going to the wayside is officer survival training, isn't it?
Right. Yes. Yeah. They want you to be so passive and laid back that they make you the last priority on every run, as opposed to you can't help anybody else if you're not alive, or if, the help's coming to help you, you're no good to anybody. After I returned fire, I reached down and felt my leg, and I could feel a handful of blood. So, through training, through 20 years of CPR class, you start, these things just go, oh man, I know what that is. And I even said it after I got hit. So I got shot in my femoral, or however you say it. I've been made fun of a few times for saying it that way. But so I immediately felt it, and I thought in my mind, I can't stay on my feet because my heart's pumping. I'm going to pump the blood out. So I sat back on my right hip, but then the gunfire was still going off above me. So my brain said, I got to get out of here. I'm going to get shot by friendly fire if nothing else. So I jumped up and hobbled out to the street where I met my lieutenant, and he was able to get a tourniquet on me, which was, like you said, there's very small space, 2 or 3 minutes that you have to get a tourniquet on, or there's no hope for you. You're gone.
Right. You have when you're shot in the femoral artery, you got about 7-8 minutes before you totally bleed out. So they get a tourniquet on you. And I want to point out to people that tourniquet's not fun. That is as painful or more painful than getting shot, isn't it?
It's more painful. I'd rather get shot again than have a tourniquet on my leg for 30 something minutes again. Yeah, that was horrible.
So they are able to get you to the hospital. Now here you are, you're a sergeant, you're a supervisor, but now you're a crime victim. So what happened after they got you to the hospital and got you stabilized? Did you know that there was going to be this, or did you have any premonition that there was going to be this national hoo-ha with this case?
Well, not until I woke up from surgery that I even knew if anybody on the other side was shot. The first thing I did was make sure all my guys were okay, which I was told that on the way to the hospital. None of us besides myself were injured, but the next day I found out who was hurt or who was, mortally wounded. And my first thought was, oh, great. Because ever since Ferguson, every time there's a police involved shooting in your agency, the first question you ask, and you shouldn't have to ask this because it shouldn't matter, but the first question you ask was, man, were they black or white? And you kind of hold your breath for a minute. And when they say they were white, you go, oh, thank God, but the question should be, was it a justified shooting? Forget white or black or male, female, it doesn't matter. But unfortunately, we've been programmed the same by the media and by the outside pressures from all you can't do this, you better watch out for this. Or, the big boogeyman's going to come after you if you shoot a black person. And you're like, well, my goal isn't to go out and shoot anybody. They brought this to us. We didn't bring it to them. And so, yes, my first thought was, this is not going to be good. Now, the only thing we had going for us at the time, or so we thought, was March 13th was the day I was shot, was the same day that they started the lockdowns nationwide for coronavirus. So that was just encompassing the news. It had taken over, the daily briefs from the president, from your governors and all that stuff. So it was pushed back for a while. And I thought, man, okay, good. I was preparing to go back to work. I'm doing my rehab hard. I'm ready to go back, do another warrant. I want to get back on the bike. Let's go. And then Ahmaud Arbery happened, and then George Floyd happened, and it just exploded.
This was, by all accounts, and still is today, it was what we call a good shoot.
Right.
You have not been charged with any crime or any of that. But you find yourself, as did some of the other officers, in the middle of this international storm of misinformation. And I don't think there has been a police shooting that has more misinformation surrounding it than the Breonna Taylor case.
100% agree. From day one, their attorneys came out and said, we had the wrong apartment. Her name wasn't on the warrant. Or her name was on the warrant. Her car was on the warrant. Her picture was on the warrant. It was all there from the beginning, from the get-go. They said she was asleep in bed. They said her attorney even at one point said we were there to rob them. I mean, and that's still going around on social media, that we were a group of thugs there to rob drug dealers. And I'm going, so we had a briefing with 40 or 50 guys who knew where we were going, and we're going to go rob them. That just made, just to ask, but people believe it. It comes from an attorney or it comes from a news channel, so we must believe it. And that's the sad part about today, is the misinformation, because once it goes out, you can't draw it back in. You can't get it in. You know, a few people might get corrected and believe you, but for the most part, I mean, even to this day, our city and department has never once got on and debunked any of the lies that was said. And this is what, a year and 5 months ago? And they've still never come out and said, you know, everything that was said here is wrong. Now that the investigation's over, we can talk about it. Because that's what they hide behind all the time is, you know, we can't talk about an ongoing investigation. Well, you can release body cam footage within 24 hours, which is basically telling the story without telling the story, but you can't tell the real story. You know, you can't just debunk the lies. That's all we asked for. And I called down and said, can we please just get some truths out? And we were told, no, we can't set precedent for future cases. And I'm like,
And
so
that,
city burn than to set precedent, which you change your precedent all the time for whatever meets your needs anyway. You know, there's not set hard precedents. I mean, we know this in politics, it changes with the wind.
well, and here's the thing, you know, and that's the problem is this case has gotten so political. When you and I were hired to be young police officers, politics was, you know, we were told, you know, we don't need to know your politics. We don't care about your politics. You don't talk about your politics on the job. And now policing, and I think you're right, it's from Ferguson on, has become incredibly politicized. And frankly, you're the victim of that. You're the victim of weak political leadership in the city of Louisville, who doesn't seem to want the truth of this story to get out. They'd rather have their police officers be thought of as racist thugs than to actually get the truth out about Breonna Taylor and her cohorts. This was not you weren't going in there looking for, you know, a bag of weed. This was a long-term multi-search warrant case. And you were looking for, in Breonna Taylor's apartment, you know, money, possible documentation, things like that. And in fact, I want you to tell people why there was no drugs. You hear this a lot in the media. There was no drugs or money or anything found in the apartment. That's because nobody looked, isn't it?
Nobody looked, none. So what happens when there's an officer-involved shooting is we have what's called a public integrity unit. They come out, they take over the scene. It's now their scene. And what they did was, we had a warrant for narcotics and documents. They came in and they wrote their own warrant for the evidence of the shooting. So they could collect shell casings, take photos, diagrams, all the stuff they do, typically like on a homicide scene. And so when they came in and did that, none of our unit was allowed in the apartment, that's fine. The integrity of the case, it needs to be upheld that way. But the problem is when they were done at 7:30 that morning, the detectives from the unit that we were helping requested to go back in and finish this. They're like, man, we got a cop shot over this. We haven't finished this. We need to go in and wrap this up. And leadership from downtown said, no, you're done. It's over. You can't even search. So nobody searched for drugs. Nobody searched for money. Nobody searched for documents. And we know for sure the documents and money were there. Who knows about drugs? Kenneth Walker had 16, 17 minutes from the time the shooting happened before he finally came out. No telling what he was doing in there the whole time. And if you're not looking for it, you can hide a lot of things in 15, 16 minutes.
Absolutely. So here you are, you nearly get shot and killed, just doing your job, trying to support your family. Then this whole shooting gets politicized. And all of a sudden you're out of town and you find yourself having to call your family and say, we got to go into hiding. Talk about that.
Yeah. So the first time was a week before we actually got removed from our house. We've been in this new house 5 weeks, maybe, that we just purchased. And I get a call saying, hey, get your family, you know, because they were like, where are you at? And I'm like, well, I'm out of town right now. I'll be back in a couple of days. And they were like, well, we're going to send somebody over to pick your wife and kid up and take them somewhere. So they went to a location and so they worked it out. I came back home, and about 5-6 days later from the time I got home on a Sunday night, I got a call saying, hey, the FBI has corroborated these two different informants, what they're saying about the hit that's out on your family and the other guys too. There was a hit on all three of us. And you got to get out of your house. You got to go. So they came, they escorted us to another location out of the city. And that was it. I mean, it was like a dream. You know, you'd seen this stuff in movies and you think, like we all do, it's not going to happen to me. And, you know, here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're very open about this. You're a man of faith. And that is one of the things that has helped you get through this. You know, you really have every right to just be a really bitter, angry guy, and you're not. And in fact, we're going to talk in a minute about how you're moving forward. But talk about your faith a minute and how that really helped you to get through all of this.
Well, my dad's a pastor. He's been one for, and I'm 48. It was before I was born. So he's 52 years, maybe. He's been a pastor. And so I was raised in a Christian home. Haven't always acted like a Christian, but I was raised in a Christian home. And so when these things hit, it's kind of like your training. You go back to what was indoctrinated in me as a child and growing up, and that's what you rely on. And you know that there's something much bigger than you. I mean, that's one of the reasons we do this job anyway. We don't do it because, you do it because it's fun and because it's a paycheck. But for most of us, it's a calling. It's a desire to help other people. And the ultimate person that helps people is Jesus Christ, right? He came and sacrificed for us. So we're willing to go out and lay our life down for other people that we don't even know, or people that hate us. But that helped me get through it. And sometimes I would get bitter or I would get angry, be like, for 21 years, I put my life on the line for these people. I've saved a lot of people. I've helped people. I've given people stuff that nobody knows about. There's so much stuff you've done as a police officer that never gets publicized. And then something like this happens, and now all of a sudden you're the enemy. And I'm thinking, man, this is so wrong. This is so backwards. But that bitterness would only eat me up. So I had to, you got to give that to God. And there's still days that you get mad and stuff, but ultimately, you just got to live your life and trust him. That's all I've done.
Well, and you are moving forward. And one of the things that you're doing now is you're going out and you're training other police officers, talking about not only your shooting, but how you're able to move forward. And that's something that's so important. And again, and you and I were talking before we started the program, that here we are in this era of defund the police, where one of the things that is being attacked and taken out of budgets is training, especially officer survival training and what we call warrior training. Talk about how that warrior mentality helped to save you.
Well, I credit this to, when I talked to Brandon, a training officer named Travis Hatchell, who was very drill sergeant-like, is the only way I can define it. His dad was military, I believe, and he was raised that way, and he played college football. So he was just a squared away guy. And one of the things he taught us was, not if, but when you're in that situation, you've got to already have thought about it. You've got to already have a plan. You've got to already tell yourself, no matter if I'm shot, no matter if I'm punched, no matter what, I'm getting out of this. This is just a setback. We're moving forward. I'm going to keep going. You're never out of the fight. And that night, that's one of the things that popped in my head. I mean, because I'd gone over scenarios countless times in your head where you're going to go do a raid, you're going to go do a rip on a body or a package or something, and you're thinking, all right, well, what's my out, or what's the end game here that's going to happen, my survival wise, if it goes bad. So that mentality was just kind of ingrained in us as police officers. And again, the warrior mentality isn't, I'm going to go fight the civilians or the citizens of my city. That's not what it's about. It's so misconstrued in the media. It's not me fighting you. It's me living to go home to my family. That's what the warrior mentality is about.
Exactly. So what's that like now, standing in front of your peers, and a lot of them are young, and talking about your incident and moving forward?
I think the first thing they're shocked with, because most of us buy into this, we both have the thin blue line flag, because we are somewhat a family, but it's not, I don't think, like it used to be as far as upper command having your back, because they're so political now. Because now most cities have gone to appointed positions at the top, not just your chiefs appointed. Now our majors over our divisions are appointed. So there's a lot of leverage over them, and they've started promoting people who are younger, who have a lot of years left, because there's a lot of control over those people. It's not like the old days where we had captains and they'd come in and the chief would say something, or the mayor, and the captain would be like, "You're not going to demote me, so here's what we're doing, the right thing." They would just go out, put their neck out on the line for you. Well, now nobody's putting their neck out on the line for you. It's all self-preservation at the top. Everything is. And where's my next job when I leave here? And how can I climb the rank one more ladder? And so you're going to get thrown under the bus. And that's what I kind of had to tell these guys. Be careful, because the people you think are your friends today, when they're put on that spot to protect you and to back you, not all of them are going to be there. Matter of fact, most of them aren't going to be there. You're going to look around and go, I've known these guys forever. Where are they? And no phone calls, no reaching out on your behalf, none of that. So that's the first thing I tell them. Then the other thing is who to depend on, your close friends, your family, your faith, all these things that you've got to wrap yourself in, or you will become bitter and lost. And we were, if I could say this real quick, we were down in, my wife's part of the National Police Wives Association now. Since this happened, she got in contact with some people, and it's been a really good thing for her and for spouses. And we were down in Baton Rouge, and they've started I think they're the first one in the nation. They've started a program where they got doctors on board in a hospital, and they've got their own, it looks like a workout area in the front where guys can go in and work out, but then there's mental health professionals in the back that they can go talk to. So it's not like you're walking in a doctor's office, because we've all got that stigma and that little bit of, we keep our guard up a little bit too much to protect others. And we think we're protecting ourselves, but we're just hurting ourselves. So they've started this thing. It's amazing down there. And it's just to get guys to go, hey, okay, this is a front. I can go in the front, look like I'm working out, but then I'm going to work out on my mind too, not just my body. And so mental health is important. I think that's one of the things I stress to these guys also. Not only you, but your kid, your spouse. If you're involved in one of these critical incidents, your whole family needs some talking to.
Absolutely, John. I wish we had more time, but we're going to have you back when the book comes out. But until then, where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
On Twitter, it's at Sergeant SGT Mattingly. And on Instagram, it's at Sergeant John Mattingly.
John, thanks so much for spending time with us today. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Sam, put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.